Welcome everyone to the next installment of our trustee training. Today we will be talking about policies. These trainings are recorded. You will be able to access them on the State Library YouTube channel, the State Library Niche Academy, and we also have the videos posted on the Public Library Board of Trustees LibGuide. You can access the LibGuides from the State Library homepage. There are two ways to get there. There is a button further down on the page, and there is a handy link on top of the search bar. Once you get to our LibGuides, click on Library Boards and choose Public Library Board of Trustees. Who am I? My name is Monica Struck. I am the Public Library Specialist at the State Library. However, I am a librarian, not a lawyer, so this webinar is not legal advice. Please consult with your local legal counsel with relevant questions. So today we are going to talk a little bit about how policy comes to be in North Dakota libraries. We're going to talk about what makes a good policy, policies that you need, and how you should make policies accessible to your patrons. So North Dakota Century Code talks about library policies in two places. In 403804, the second point, in the duties of the library board to make and adopt bylaws, rules, regulations for management of the library and reading room. And then again in 403807, where it states that the library board can make reasonable rules and regulations for the use of the library, and it allows the board to exclude people from using the library for a violation of the rules. So how do policies come to be? First, library staff usually will see a need, something is routinely coming up. It's not directly addressed in policy or maybe even indirectly addressed. So the library director will bring this to the board. And then the board will decide, whether, a policy is the way to go. If they decide, yes, let's go the policy route, a policy will be drafted. Usually this is done by the director with input from the board, staff, but that's not a requirement. If the board wants to be more hands-on with policy writing, it can be done in committee. And just highly recommend, if you do it that way, you are consulting with the library staff who will be enforcing the policy. After the policy is drafted, it will be brought to the board. The board will review it. They'll either approve or make modifications as necessary. And once the policy is approved and adopted, the library will start providing access to it to the patrons. So what makes a good policy? It should be non-reactionary, meaning, it's, not reacting to a one-time occurrence. It's not, making a preemptive policy over something that might happen in your library. And in the same vein, keep it relevant. So don't be making policies for things that have never happened. And they should also be enforceable. So that means they have to be in line with the law, and consequences should be doable for the staff, and things of that nature. Policy versus procedure. So the policy is the external document. It's what the patrons see. Procedure is how the policy is carried out. And the reason I throw this slide in is that another quality of a good policy is that the procedure isn't in it. And I will tell you why. It is because policy needs to be approved by the board, but procedure does not. And so if the policy is filled with procedure, if library staff realizes that the procedure isn't working, they need to go to the board to adjust the procedure that isn't working. And when the board is meeting, at most once a month, and some are meeting only quarterly, this can cause, some big problems, especially with procedure that isn't working. So as you review policies, and we encourage libraries to review existing policies regularly. If you're noticing policies that have a lot of procedure in them, work to remove the procedure because it really helps the libraries to be more responsive with, how they are, enforcing the policy and, bringing the policy to life in the daily runnings of the library. And everyone is just happier when the procedure is not in the policy. So policies that you need, the ones listed on this slide are, not the only ones a library might need, but they're a good starting point. All libraries need a circulation policy. This will govern, loan periods, so how long people can keep items. It also outlines what happens when people do not return items. If you're, a fine-free library, that will show up in the circulation policy. Interlibrary loan policy is often addressed in circulation as well. Collection development. This includes intellectual freedom, donations, weeding, and reconsideration. It's basically how the library builds their collection. This policy, along with the reconsideration procedure, is now required by state law. We did a big push to make sure that all the libraries had updated policies in this department. Last year, made a report to legislature. If you are curious about whether your library is compliant, I am happy to look that up for you. Computer use policies, this would include internet access. Patron privacy policies, this would include, or could include, freedom to read, freedom to view statements from ALA, or at the very least, the bit of Century Code that states that records linking patrons with what they have searched for or borrowed is only released pursuant to court order. Facility use policies, this would include accessibility, use of displays, use of the meeting room, if applicable. Generally, a good idea to have policies around that. And then public safety policies are a must. Unattended children and vulnerable adults, so that would be, how you handle children who are left at library close with no adult to pick them up. What defines inappropriate behavior, and general emergency procedures. How should you give access to these policies? There isn't a right or a wrong, well, the only wrong way to provide policy access is to not give access to the policies. Because you can't get mad at people for breaking policies if they don't have access to them. You can keep printed copies at service desks so that the library workers can hand them out to people who want to see them, or at least have a digital copy handy at the desk so that they can be printed off for curious patrons. I highly recommend that they be on your website if you have a website. This is part of the excelling library, public library standards. So it's not required for all of the standards, but it's a high recommendation from me. And it also can be handy to have a consolidated version of all of your policies in a binder at the service desk, just so that staff can, reference as situations come up. So now I will pause for any questions. And I'm just going to advance slides so that I can stop sharing and see if anything's coming up in the chat. Anything else I can help you with? No? Okay. All right. Short and sweet. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. Bye.